Hello everyone, hope you're having a wonderful day. In the previous episode, Alex's mother unexpectedly witnessed a stranger threatening Tuna, leaving everyone shaken. Today, we'll uncover what happens next, when Mrs. Puang quietly tests Mai and begins to sense that the person hiding the most may be closer than anyone imagined. Be sure to leave a comment and share your thoughts. Do you think Alex's mother made the right judgment and decision? Mrs. Puang had always believed that the truth never needed force to surface. It revealed itself quietly, through patience, observation, and time. And that morning, Mrs. Puang had already decided. She would find out who was hiding the truth. After Alex left for work, the house became very quiet. Mrs. Puang watched him drive away. She didn't call him back. She didn't warn him about anything. Instead, she went inside, picked up her phone, and made a decision. "Mai," she said gently when the call connected. "It's Auntie Puang. Are you free today? Why don't you come over for some tea?" Her voice was friendly and relaxed. No one would suspect anything. But her real purpose was clear. She wanted to observe Mai, not to accuse her, just to watch. There was a short pause on the line. "Yes, Auntie," Mai replied quickly. "I'll come." Mrs. Puang ended the call and quietly prepared the tea. When Mai arrived, she looked perfect, neatly dressed, calm expression, a small gift basket in her hands. "Auntie," Mai said politely, "I brought some supplements for your health." "That's very kind," Mrs. Puang replied. "Come in, sit with me." She poured the tea herself and made sure Mai sat beside her, not across the room, close enough to notice everything. At first, the conversation was light and ordinary. They talked about traffic, about the weather, about how busy Alex had been lately. Mai spoke smoothly. She laughed at the right moments. She looked relaxed. Then Mrs. Puang slowly changed the subject. "Alex has been under a lot of pressure recently," she said. "Work hasn't been easy." Mai nodded immediately. "Yes, Auntie, I can tell he's stressed." Mrs. Puang didn't continue. She let the silence sit for a moment. Then she spoke again, as if it were casual. "Recently, something else happened." Mai looked at her. "Really?" "Yes," Mrs. Puang said. "Alex has gotten close to someone, a woman." Mai's smile stayed the same, but her posture stiffened slightly. "A single mother," Mrs. Puang added. Mai blinked once. "She lives at a farm outside the city," Mrs. Puang continued. "Her name is Tuna." The room felt different. "She's quiet and hard-working," Mrs. Puang said. "But lately, she's been very scared." Mai leaned closer. "Scared?" "Yes," Mrs. Puang replied. "Someone approached her." She paused. "Twice." Mai's fingers tightened on her lap. "The first time," Mrs. Puang said, "the man went to her farm. He warned her not to get close to Alex." Mai reached for her teacup. "The second time," Mrs. Puang continued, "he followed her on the road. He threatened her." Mai slowly put the cup down. "You mean?" she said carefully. "Tuna?" Then she quickly added, "I'm sorry, Auntie, but who is Tuna?" That was the moment Mrs. Puang had been waiting for. She didn't answer right away. She simply looked at Mai. "You don't know her?" she asked calmly. Mai shook her head. "No, I don't think I've heard that name before. Is she someone who works for Alex?" Mrs. Puang smiled gently. "She's the woman I just mentioned," she said. "The one Alex cares about. The one living at the farm with her child." Mai blinked again, just once. "Oh," she said quietly. "I see." "What worries me," Mrs. Puang continued, "is that the man knew her daily routine. He knew where she lived and when she was alone." Mai lifted her teacup. then put it back down without drinking. "That's frightening," she said. "But maybe it was just coincidence." "Maybe," Mrs. Puang replied. "But Tu Na lives a very quiet life. She doesn't make enemies." Mai sighed softly. "Some people are just cruel." Mrs. Puang looked straight at her. "Cruel people usually have a reason," she said. Silence filled the room. After a moment, Mai spoke again. "Auntie," she said gently, "are you worried this will affect Alex, with everything already happening?" "I worry about my son every day," Mrs. Puang replied. Mai nodded. "He's strong. He'll get through it." "Yes," Mrs. Puang said calmly, "but even strong people can be betrayed." Mai laughed lightly. "Trust is important." Her hand shook slightly. Mrs. Puang noticed. She lifted her teacup and took a slow sip. Mai said she didn't know Tu Na, but her body told a different story. The visit ended politely. Mai smiled, said goodbye, and left. But the moment the door closed, Mrs. Puang's expression changed. She already had her answer. This was not coincidence. This was not random. Someone was trying to control the situation, and Mai knew more than she admitted. Because this visit was never just a visit, it was a test, and Mai had failed it. After Mai left, the house became quiet again. The teacups were still on the table, but the warmth was gone. Mrs. Puang did not clean them up right away. She sat there for a long moment, thinking about everything that had just happened. Mai's smile, her careful words, the way her hand trembled when she spoke about trust. Nothing had been said directly, yet everything had been revealed. Not long after, the front door opened. "Mom." Alex stepped inside and greeted her softly. He looked tired, the kind of tired that came not only from work, but from carrying too many worries alone. He loosened his tie and sat down beside her. "You're home early today," Mrs. Puang said gently. "I finished my meetings sooner than expected," Alex replied. After a brief pause, he asked, "Was Mai here?" "Yes," she answered calmly. "She just left." Alex nodded and turned toward his mother. "You wanted to talk to me?" Mrs. Puang folded her hands neatly on her lap. Her voice was calm but serious. "Alex," she said, "from now on, I want you to be careful around Mai." Alex looked surprised. "Careful? Why, Mom?" "Because during our conversation," she replied, "I could feel that she was hiding something." Alex sighed softly. "Mom, Mai and I have known each other for many years. We've been friends since before the company even started." "That's exactly why I'm worried," Mrs. Puang said. "When people are too familiar, they stop being cautious, and that can be dangerous." Alex fell silent. "She pretended not to know Tu Na," Mrs. Puang continued, "but her reactions didn't match her words. She was nervous, too careful. Even when she smiled, I could see fear in her eyes." Alex's expression changed. "Do you think she's connected to what happened to Tu Na?" "I can't be sure," Mrs. Puang said honestly, "but I'm certain she knows more than she's willing to admit." Alex nodded slowly. "I'll pay attention." "Don't confront her yet," Mrs. Puang added. "Just observe, and don't let old friendships blind you." "I understand," Alex said quietly. A short silence followed. Then Mrs. Puang spoke again, this time more gently. "There's something else I want to say." Alex turned to her. "What is it, Mom?" "I think you should marry Tu Na," she said plainly. Alex froze. "Mom." "I'm serious," Mrs. Puang continued. "That girl has suffered enough. She's been frightened, threatened, and left to face danger alone. She needs protection. She needs stability." Alex lowered his head. I care about her deeply, you know that. But with my work, with all these problems, that's exactly why, Mrs. Puang interrupted softly. When life becomes uncertain, you hold on to what truly matters. She continued, her voice steady and warm. Tuna doesn't want money or status. She only wants a safe life for herself and her child. A place where she doesn't have to be afraid. Alex took a deep breath. By marrying her, Mrs. Puang said, you're not rushing. You're taking responsibility. You're giving her a family, and giving yourself one too. Alex stayed quiet for a moment, then nodded slowly. I'll think about it seriously, he said. Mrs. Puang smiled, relieved. That's all I wanted to hear. She looked at her son with gentle firmness. Just remember this, Alex, she said. Love doesn't make you weak. It makes you stronger and more alert. She paused. From now on, keep your eyes open, especially when it comes to Mai. Alex stared ahead, his thoughts heavy but clear. He finally understood. This was no longer just about business, not jealousy, not coincidence. It was about protecting the woman he loved and the family he was beginning to build. After a tense and revealing visit, Mrs. Puang becomes deeply suspicious of Mai's behavior and subtle reactions. When Alex returns home, his mother warns him not to let old friendships cloud his judgment, sensing that Mai may be hiding something connected to the threats against Tuna. Though nothing is openly proven, Mrs. Puang's intuition as a mother tells her that danger may be closer than it appears. She urges Alex to stay alert, protect Tuna, and take responsibility for the woman he loves and her child. More than a business issue or personal rivalry, the situation becomes a turning point about trust, loyalty, and family. As Alex listens to his mother's heartfelt advice, he begins to understand that building a safe, loving home with Tuna may be the strongest way to face the growing threats ahead.